Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to be with you here in beautiful, beautiful Marrakech. Very much enjoyed that incredible in-depth talk. And of course, The Eternal Daughter just landed in UK cinemas. And it just feels like this was a film that meant a lot both to you and to Joanna. What you were talking about, you know, this magical confusion about your mothers, and you've had this amazing collaborative approach to creating these characters and story. What did that film mean to you, and what does it mean to you to see it in UK cinemas finally?
I wonder if there's anybody listening who still has, or had a really close friend when they were 10, as I was. And, you know, we talk constantly about our mothers and how mysterious they were to us and how they didn't add up. But to have the opportunity, like 40 years later, to make, or 50 years later, my Lord, we're all getting so old, to make a film about it, it's just extraordinary. And yeah, the conversations that we had when we were shooting the film, when we were preparing it, and all these conversations we're having since, they're the same as the conversations we had when we were young. And I think there's always going to be a bit of a generation gap between mothers and daughters. But my sense is that the chasm between mothers like our mothers and daughters like us, particularly artist daughters born in the 60s, was particularly drafty. With all the best will in the world, with all the warmth and all the love in the world, there are great sort of tumbleweeds of misunderstanding, and so we looked at that.
It was also fascinating to hear, you know, on the one hand, also not thinking yourself necessarily as an actor, but in particular in this film, rather than these being two characters, you know, inhabiting that person and then speaking spontaneously from that point of view, rather than this kind of performative performance, you know, regurgitating pre-written dialogue. So why was that process so important?
Oh, it's amazing. It's such an amazing experience for me, because it's the bit of performance that I'm interested in, and it's maybe the bit that makes me not a proper actor. It certainly reveals to me, kind of exposes how not interested in interpretation I am, and I'm certainly not interested in getting it right. But that feeling of being a person and asking oneself the question always, do I respond to what was just asked of me? And what words might I use? And that feeling of ease, not having to jump at a line that you're trying to remember that was written on a page. That's what I'm really interested in as a performer. And Joanna works in this way, and it's one of the many reasons that I love to work with her, because she's really interested in just continually asking the questions, not really coming up with any answers, and looking at people, not characters. They're portraits of people.
Also great to hear, you know, this idea of being calm and comfortable in your life so that you can then be wild and revolutionary in your art. And it does feel, you know, all through your career, but, you know, particularly now, you choose very carefully who you work with. And, you know, some of these, you know, directors that have such a strong visual style, David Fincher, Wes Anderson, Luca Guadagnino. But then, you know, on the other side, like slightly different collaborations with people like Joanna Hogg. So how do you choose those projects, and what's important to you about making sure that collaboration is just right?
They're just people who I love, and we have conversations that make me curious. And out of those conversations, sometimes about cinema, but not always, they might just be about life, come these little seeds of ideas of projects we might do together. And there are new ones. I mean, the people you mention I've known for years and years, Sarah, but there are others. I mean, I just made a film which I hope is coming out early next year. It's been a bit delayed because of the strike, which I made with Julio Torres, who's a kind of genius, was a writer for many years with Saturday Night Live. And it's hard for me to remember that I've only known him for a couple of years, but he feels like a new familiar. And it's where I started. I started with Derek Jarman in this very close, very familial kind of vibe where we just cook stuff up with a group. And that's what I love. That's my kind of drug. And the thing that's really good news for me is that it wasn't only Derek that was interested in working in that kind of atmosphere. And there are many people, you know, from Bong Joon-ho to Apichat Pongwirit, you know, all around the world. There's a feeling of people wanting to make things together, not one person to figure it out and then ask people to jump. It's a really blessed way to work.
And can you tell us a bit about this new collaboration? Well, a new film, Joshua Oppenheimer, The End. I mean, it sounds, I was reading the description, kind of wrap your head around, musical, the golden age of Broadway, being in this kind of apocalyptic atmosphere. All sounds very exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm just as curious as anybody else. We shot it earlier this year, and it's being sort of, cooked up now, and I hope we'll see it next year. Joshua Oppenheimer is an incredibly important artist. He made these extraordinary documentaries about Indonesia, the act of killing and the look of silence. And this is his first non-documentary film. So it's a departure. He, in a way, felt like a first-time filmmaker making it. So there was this wonderful feeling of beginner's mind. And it is kind of bonkers. It's the richest family in America. But he, played by Michael Shannon, probably, had more than his fair share of blame for causing an ecological disaster on the planet. And as a result, we're living in a bunker, which is kind of all decked out like Versailles with amazing paintings and art, and wearing Chanel and eating incredible food. We've been there for 25 years, and we are going on living there as if we're on the Upper East Side of New York, and we sing. Because that's what you do in times of disaster. The two great moments of the development of the Hollywood musical were after the First and the Second World War, the 30s in particular, and then the 50s. And I think it's part of our proposal that when you can't talk, when you can't rationalize, you sing.
What really excited me, people can often be a bit negative about the future of cinema, and you said this afternoon you feel like the next generation are actually, it's the opposite. They love cinema, they have the cinema literacy, and they appreciate it in contrast to the streaming platforms.
Well, I think, one thing to say that I've always been clear to me is cinema is so elastic and robust, and she can stretch and bend and morph, and she's not going anywhere. And this newer, I don't know, one never knows what generation one's talking about, but a younger generation is also extremely flexible and extremely wise to all the different rubbery ways that culture can come from. There's a sense of openness and, as I say, a lack of snobbery about all art forms, and that's a good match, and that's what we need. That kind of agreement of trust and of chutzpah is what we need for cinema to have the kind of champions going forward. So I'm not worried in the slightest. I think that cinema's, we just started a whole new swathe of enthusiasm for cinema. And the new cinema that's being made is bearing that out. I mean, there is extraordinary filmmaking going on, first and second time filmmakers right now. So we ain't seen nothing yet.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoy the rest of the time here in Marrakech.
It's lovely
to meet you. Thank you.